Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Kennedy and you're watching Sitebulb Live Q&A on Core Web Vitals. Join me tonight from the Sitebulb team. We've got Patrick here and we've also got two other amazing guests. We've got Billie and Arnout. Now, as I said, we're going to be talking about everything to do with Core Web Vitals tonight. Got a list of questions that we're going to try and cover off. If you're watching though and the chat, we've got Simon in there who's going to wrangle the chat and he'll try and flag up any questions to us. So if you've got anything, put them in the live chat and we'll try and get to them if we can as well. So before we get started on the questions, I am going to ask Arnout and Billie if you can give a bit of an introduction to yourselves. So if you could let us know, who are you, what do you do, and what do you do with Core Web Vitals? Billie, would you like to go first?
Hi, I'm Billie. I'm a senior account manager at the SEO Works based in Sheffield. And basically, Sheffield. And basically, Core Web Vitals is a big part of what I do at the minute. Obviously, all of our clients have gone wild and are a bit obsessed with it, or very terrified, or just don't care. But yeah, I personally do a lot of technical SEO, so this is kind of my jam. That's it for me, really.
Good stuff. I think that's the main thing, is that if you're an SEO, this is starting to become your jam one way or another. And how about yourself, Arnout?
I'm Arnout Hellemans. I'm based in Amsterdam, and I'm a freelance SEO consultant working for a lot of companies. I don't purely do SEO. I do a lot of stuff on analytics as well and some other stuff, but have been working on site performance and site speed as such, also Core Web Vitals, for quite a few years now, in different capacities and at different kind of websites. And that's me, and I'm 45 years old, and it's my wedding anniversary today, so that's pretty cool. And I've got 3 kids, and I live in Amsterdam, and I can't wait to meet you all in real life again. That's just one thing that's on my mind. I'm getting fed up with 2D meetings like these.
Absolutely.
Core Web Vitals is much better over a pint as well.
Definitely.
Right. So, like I say, I'll start on the questions in a minute. Just to reiterate what Simon's saying in the chat there, if you can put a Q at the start of any questions, that helps us pull them out. So, first off, we obviously are quite focused on audit at Sitebulb. So here's a one that we thought was quite relevant. Should Core Web Vitals be part of a technical SEO audit, or should we be looking to break it into a separate type of audit? So I suppose the obvious question is, have you been doing Core Web Vitals audits as yet? So Billie, I can see you nodding your head there.
I think I feel like most people have probably been including aspects of Core Web Vitals in the technical audits for years. A lot of the things that are in there aren't new. They may have, some of them, people are acting like they're brand new names and stuff, but CLS and stuff, it's nothing new. These are things we should have been looking at for a long time, and I think there's just a bit more of a focus on them now. And they should absolutely just be a part of the one technical audit. Like, how long is your technical audit to really need to do this on a completely different scale? That's kind of like how I feel about it, at least anyway.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I agree. And in some cases, it's not just purely for search engines, right? If you have a well-optimized site and it's just a nightmare to load, or like other things break, you can't click CTAs. There's loads of things that it's not just for SEO. It's also for the user and for making your website work. So, and definitely, and it's always been a long time thing I've been hammering about. You see it back in PPC, quality scores, like loads of other things. And yeah, so definitely. But not just a pure SEO audit. It could also be like a conversion rate audit. So I don't think it's a pure play SEO thing, but it should be part of any audit.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to touch on and build on what you've just said there as well. I feel like a lot of this falls under accessibility, and that should fall under just everything to do with the website. If, in the UK alone, there's something like either 2 or 10 million. I literally wrote about this the other day and I forgot the exact number. But there's like an X amount of people living with some sort of disability. So whether it's just a case of getting that meta viewport right, being able to click on all the buttons, being able to navigate the site, like this all falls under it. And although some of those aren't core web vitals, these are things that we should look at anyway. And like everyone should be on the forefront of anyone who builds something online's mind. I personally think anyway.
Yeah, well, and on that, what you see a lot is people build their websites and they get tested on desktop. Well, 70% of their visitors are mobile. Like, really? Just the other day, tried ordering something, and then the delivery options, you could literally not read it keeping your phone like this. But if you would switch it like this, they were readable. It's like, really? So... yeah.
There's one retailer here in the UK, a very big one. I'm not going to name and shame because I feel like I might get told off. I don't know. But their CLS is so bad. So if you've got limited mobility, like just trying to get the buttons, even for myself, who's like fine, I was getting so worked up just trying to add something to my basket. And I added this barbecue to my basket 3 times in the end. It just kept moving. I can see the comments saying name and shame.
Yeah, definitely.
Will I get in trouble, Jeff and Patrick?
Not from us.
It's Argos.
Oh, good.
Add it to the list.
Yeah.
We'll start harassing them.
With Sitebulb, I often use Argos as a test case for various things, so don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the SEO for Argos on tonight, thankfully.
I think they need one. Let's every single one of us just go talk to them.
There's also nothing wrong with buying 3 barbecues, though, so just... Yeah.
There is if you can't afford it.
Touché.
So, follow-on question from that. How often should you be looking to audit core web vitals? And I suppose the thing that's tied up in this as well is the auditing versus ongoing optimization. So what are your opinions on how often you should be looking at this stuff?
I feel like it should be at the back of your mind, like quite frequently, but I wouldn't go about auditing it too often. I know Search Console's report updates every 28 days, which if I'm actively working on it, I'll look at that, but I'm not going to do a full audit every 28 days. I'm probably not going to do a full audit every 3 months. I will check the results of the aspects I'm working on, but it just feels like unnecessary time, especially because I'm billing clients for my time on it. If I know my work's, if I'm only focusing on one area, I'm not going to do a full audit. But it's the SEO answer of it depends. If I'm doing a load of work, I might check on it after like 2 months. But if I'm not going to check it for 3 to 6 months.
I think there's a few things at play here. One is that Google tends to change the rules. So the one time you have a really good score and you don't change anything, and suddenly they start adjusting the weighting factors, and then your score goes down. You haven't changed anything on the actual website, nothing to do with it. So that's one part that I've seen happening. The other thing, and I fully agree with Billie, is it depends. So if you have a small site and you don't do an awful lot of releases, just getting it to a top-notch position, you can just leave it for a bit, right? Unless you really do something. If, however, you're working on a massive project, this is where things, you need to put thresholds in place. You need to put proper monitoring in place. So a great place to start is the Crux report, which is the Chrome user, Chrome user experience report, I guess.
Yeah.
Which any larger website with, I think, 400 data points, it will get a monthly updated report, and you can get it to benchmark against any of your competitors because it's a public data set. So that's a great starting point. The other one is, if you want to go slightly more sophisticated, is use Lighthouse on the CLI, and then you can use something called performance budgets. So you can literally embed it into your Q&A when you do a new release, so that the JavaScript can't exceed a certain size, or the images and all of that. So that's another way of doing it. So I guess, again, it depends. If you're a small site and you don't do an awful lot of releases, it's fine. Do it every 3 months, or just monitor it in a different way. If you're a massive site where you have like a monthly release, or you need to do it after any release, or preferably before.
Yeah. I suppose it often depends as well, like Billie was saying, whether you're doing this for clients, or if you're in-house, maybe it's something a bit more often that you're working on, and the scale of it. So a lot of it depends. We've got a good one in the chat here, actually. I was going to move on to actually looking at getting stuff implemented. So this fits in nicely. So what's been the most successful way to quantify the value of fixing core web vital issue when the dev queue is so long? So persuading clients to actually do something.
Do you want to go first, Billie? You take it.
So this is something that I talk about a lot, is trying to get developers on board with technical SEO. And sometimes it is really difficult to get things pushed through, especially when they've got an incredibly long queue of tickets. One thing I've got in trouble with developers for doing, but has worked in my favor many of times, is I will nag and nag and nag until I can see their full queue of tickets. And I will try to find something that I know plays a part into my core web vitals, like things I want to optimize. In terms of quantifying the value, it's really difficult to do, because I do think currently some of the tools that are available to us for core web vitals are a little bit dramatic. Like, you're getting like negative scores, and it's telling you basically everything's wrong. But if you action everything they're saying, it's probably going to save like 0.02 seconds. And like, if it takes a developer 10 hours to fix something, is that really worth it? So I advise on trying to figure out how widespread the problem is. Don't just look at the homepage or just a couple of pages. Like, try to look at like between 10 and 50, figure out how big of an issue it is, if it varies on different pages, and try to put it in terms of what the return of investment would be. But it is really difficult with core web vitals, because if the content's not there, you're still not going to rank. Having a fast, beautifully made site's not going to just purely make you rank on its own. I don't know if I actually answered that.
I think the most successful way that I've seen a case for web performance was aligning it with the business goals. And with that, I mean, at a big corporate, they wanted to have become greener. So if you make your websites a lot faster, there's calculators out there that will think about the CO2 impact that has. with that, you tick that box. If, say, inclusivity, that anybody can use the website, you can basically start introducing something called a device tax. So low-end devices, if you're high on scripts, it becomes very heavy. So that was another one. A third one was profitability. So what we did, we checked all the average load times in analytics. So one thing to do is, if you have a bigger site, make sure you send all the load times and Core Web Vital things to an analytics system. Could be Adobe or GA. And once you have that data, you can start looking at the chance of them converting. What you'll see is that the faster the experience is for a user, the more prone they are to convert. And I've built cases that way, and we've seen impact in the millions by just shifting people to faster buckets. So with that, you create a really compelling case because you hit all the objectives for the business, and then you can get them on board. And that has been a massive help. The other thing I wanted to say is that in a lot of cases, and Billie touched upon this, is you don't just look at one single thing, because usually the development queue is full of one little things, like change this on the form, or do this on this page, or do this on this calculator, or whatever. Whereas Core Web Vitals, if you're going to optimize the CSS or the loading of images, it's site-wide. So it's going to impact all parts of the business. So especially with large corporates, it normally doesn't get pushed through because the impact seems to be small. But if you extrapolate it to all pages, the impact is going to be absolutely massive. So it's about finding the hooks that are relevant to the business to get them on board. And then this is, in my opinion, a great way to approach it. Again, you have to have a bigger site and not a very small site, because in that case, you should just do it.
Yeah.
And your development queue shouldn't be that big.
I think a lot of this seems to be come back to, if they don't care about SEO, find something else that it impacts to hang it on to. Which often seems to be the case.
Just the CO2 impact, and we chatted about this as well. Yeah. It's like, just show the number of trees you're burning because of excess code. It's massive in some cases.
Definitely. So one about your specific experience. So what are the most common Core Web Vital issues you've found or worked on? Is there anything that keeps cropping up again and again?
Every single site I've worked on ever has just had massive images. Like the amount of speed we can just get from resizing images has just been wild. For WordPress sites, the amount of WordPress sites I've come across that have Jetpack on them, which I did a bit of a case study about this on my own blog. Like I had it and then I removed it and I went up like 20, like in the scores that it gives you on page speed insights. It's wild. And another issue I see a lot is just not having the correct meta viewport tag. Like, again, I know that's like, some people are like, that's not CLS, but I disagree. Like it affects how the site loads, the layout, like whether you can zoom in and out. And I think that's a big part of it. And your honestly Sitebulb has done me the biggest like solid by being able to just find these issues for me. Like, I know it's just a case of inspecting and typing in viewport, but I don't even bother anymore. I'm just like, Sitebulb will tell me. I know it's wrong. But them three, every site I get has those three, guaranteed.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think another big one is just shipping an enormous amount of excess code, especially on WordPress sites with loads of plugins, loads of other things. And I mean, Patrick knows this. I mean, I keep nagging on and on the code coverage report, but I think in Sitebulb that's a really cool tool because it helps me to explain devs what's wrong. Because normally you just see, well, you're shipping unused code. That's basically what PHP test tells you, or Lighthouse test. But it doesn't tell you if you're going to remove this, if anything breaks on the website. And this is the reason a lot of people won't touch anything that is in the code because you don't want to break anything. But I've seen websites where they were literally shipping code to every single page load, and it's just being used on a single page out of 100,000. So it's, yeah, I think that's a common thing as well. Massive font files. I often see them as well. And people will say, well, but they're cached and they're fine. And I'm going like, well, it's not fine if you ship 600 kilobytes of fonts, right? It's not needed. That's an awful lot of characters. I think Elementor often has it. So if websites use Elementor, it's just, let's ship everything to every page. It's like, and then when you go to the one who built it was like, no, I don't want to remove that because it might break stuff. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, site builders have a lot to answer for.
Definitely.
Yeah, and just on that code coverage, just in case anyone doesn't understand what you can do with Sitebulb, is you can get it to check all of your JavaScript and CSS files across the whole site and look for, okay, there's this much code is being used out of this whole file when we take into account every single page on the site. So you can go to devs and say, look, there's all this wasted code, or even files that are just not being, they're loading every single page, only used on one page. So all of these sorts of things you can start to pull out.
No, I think the really cool thing is that it highlights the lines they are not being used to render the page. You can't just immediately remove it, but you have a very compelling argument going to a dev going,
yeah, what does this do?
What?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they tell me, like, where do I start? Well, actually, this is where you start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So the next question is a follow-on from that. So which fixes have the biggest impact on core web vitals? Without using it depends.
It's changeable.
Well played.
It's a per case, a per website thing, and it also, I think the other part on there is, what are you looking for? Is it the CLS? Is it the LCP? Is it like, what is it that you're trying to fix? I've seen a lot of these. So, this. Without it depends, I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah. If you don't know what's broken, you don't know what's going to have the impact.
Exactly.
Yeah. I suppose the next question kind of flips that round a little bit as well, though. So maybe I'll bring this one up. So, do you have any quick wins? Now, I'm thinking what you were saying before, Billie, about the images, that seems like an area that sometimes people can focus on. Is there something specific in there that you would give?
So it depends on the CMS, but I'm a massive fan of WP Optimized on WordPress and just pressing the shrink button and just letting it do its thing. And I always find that a quick win. I know I said it earlier, but getting rid of Jetpack and any unused plugins, I sometimes have to sit down with my clients and be like, do you actually use this? And they're like, yeah, it does this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. You're thinking of another plugin. We'll get rid of this. You don't use it. And the amount of like time you can save by just auditing what's there. I'm also a big fan of basically any plugin that just can get rid of the Google fonts itself. I think it's Hummingbird, or it might be WP Optimize, that'll just go through and get rid of the unused ones like that. There's just so many quick wins. I'm overwhelmed trying to think of them without like taking too long.
We've got some chat going on there at the minute asking what is everyone's WordPress plugin record. We've got 88 at the moment. So
88.
quite
Jesus.
impressive.
So the one I use is Lightspeed Cache, and I was pretty impressed with that, especially since you can use it with the free version of Cloudflare, and it will also set up the CDN for it. It will do broadly. It will do like HTTP to push and all of these kind of things. And literally took me on a test site, it took me about 2.5 hours to get it almost maximized, like completely. So I really like that. And the other thing it does, it basically scans, it runs a cron job that will auto optimize all the images, send it away to a free tier. So you don't, if you don't publish an awful it for you, get it back, and then serve it as a WebP if WebP is supported, and otherwise as a JPEG. Or so that's pretty cool. I'm really happy with that. And the other big tip for me is if you can, just let it run over Cloudflare, because then you get it served from the edge, from a CDN. It's just an awful lot faster, massively faster.
No,
So
makes
those
sense.
are basically my big wins for this,
Yeah.
for WordPress. And I think for the other ones, it depends.
Yeah, always. So, got a one from the chat here. It's quite specific. So, when we're talking about auditing earlier on, one of the cases that got mentioned was if you are migrating or doing any big work on the site. So, Iman was talking about, he clarified in the chat there that he was talking about core web vitals, things that you should be looking at when you're migrating. So have you got any main areas that you think you should look at in that instance?
For in respect to Core Web Vitals.
Yeah. So in relation to performance, I suppose, or wider performance even.
I guess it depends if this is a, if you've got a rebuilt site here, because if you've got a rebuilt
Yeah.
site, then you get to start at the beginning, right? Or
Yeah,
is
but
this?
then you have to set the right thresholds. Like every time you do a new build, what I often see is that I get into discussions because I've got a big list of this is I'm going to audit you when you go live, so you better have all of this fixed. And I basically say I want to have at least a score of 80, but I also put in the maximum page size can only be 1 megabyte, but preferably less. Because if you don't do it, you can still build a page which is relatively slow, but scores high on the core, well, on a lot of
Yeah,
it ticks a lot
the
of the
metrics.
boxes. So it doesn't make any sense that way. And the question I always get when I send that list is like, but we can't decide if a page is going to be more than 1 meg. And then I get into a better discussion because I say, well, it's a combination of those two. And I think that is a really important one. So if you're going to do a migration, make sure that before you do it, you set the right thresholds or quality assurance or acceptance criteria that you're going to test against. That's the big one for me.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people treat migrations as a scary thing, whereas what we should often be doing is more treated as a way to improve, to like, how do we get our requirements in? It needs to be that opportunity to get this stuff to the top of the dev queue. Fresh start, maybe, possibly. Got a one I really like from Arish now in the chat. So how can we future-proof some of these fixes that we put in place so we're not seeing the same issue again? So treating the core of the problem rather than the symptom. That's the thing I always keep banging on about.
I think SEO, if you're in-house agency freelance, it needs to be not just a piece of work that we're doing, we get it done. It needs to be like an education piece that we do. So we need to like talk to the client about things that they can do to do better online in the future. Say if they cancel our contract or anything, like we shouldn't be like, we're not sharing our information, because they're still going to be churning out products and content. So I always try to talk them through how to properly like optimize an image, like alt tags, file names, making sure it's compressed before uploading. I also random spot check so my clients think they're on edge, like they're a bit worried, and I'm like, what are you doing? Please stop. But if we can teach them why we need things doing, it does reduce the chance of the work needing to be redone. I also try to push for any internal documents to contain information on whatever the thing is we're trying to fix. So if it's something for developers, I will bully my way into having something in writing about why a thing's been done. So if they ever come back to a note, they know why it was. Or if I can put it in a content writer's onboarding guide, like for me, SEO doesn't just stop at Google. Like I'm the most clingiest SEO ever. I think my clients either love me or hate me, because I'm like, what are we doing today? Who are we talking to? Can I come to all your meetings? Who's this person? Can I talk to them? And I've been doing that all virtually, but it's handy to really like embed yourself in there and embed SEO in as much reasoning as you can.
Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, of course, and education is a big part. But I think another one that I briefly touched upon is setting performance budgets, because then it can become part of your acceptance criteria. So that way, if you set the budgets right, you can't push anything live that just screws the experience. So I shared it in the chat. It's basically, you can just install it and run it from any machine. So with two of my clients, actually just build it into the development pipeline. So the developers could check it themselves, and they knew the hard boundaries, the budgets I'd set for JavaScript, CSS, font size, image size, all of that. If you then build a page which is your average page or a normal page you're going to test, then if a new release exceeds the performance budget, you can just prevent the release from going live. And I think that's, you might think it's a bit childish, but I think it's a great way to just get it embedded. And the really cool thing is, you can always adjust the budgets. So you can go minus 10%, minus 20%. And in the end, you'll end up with a way faster website. So I think that's especially for larger sites with continuous delivery and those kind of things, it could be an absolute massive win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So jumping back over to measurement stuff. So I'm going to put Patrick on the spot with this one, because I know he's been doing a lot of this, and I've been reading a piece on some upcoming documentation of ours. So Patrick, core web vitals are interesting proxy metrics, but you can't measure everything. Do you use or like any other metrics to measure the user experience? What have we been doing?
We like the lab data because we can get that. So that's what we've got coming up next in SiteBulb, is collecting lab data directly from Chrome. So pretty much everything you get from Lighthouse for one page. Sitebot will be able to give you for every page, well, as many pages as you choose to sample, essentially. Yeah, that's sort of where we're starting with, in terms of the metrics themselves, but then also actually looking at the rule sets. So that's the other thing we're implementing is the also the diagnostics and opportunities that you can get from Lighthouse, running them across all the pages as well. So you can run them across every single page on your site when we release version 5 very soon. And what that will allow you to do is to basically take all of those rules and run that, and so you can essentially identify this is a problem on every single page, this is a problem on half the site, this is a problem on a quarter of the site, and all of those things. Obviously, it's not a measurement exactly, but it's allowing you to move forward with a piece of advice essentially about what you can do to fix the problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. So from a more of a hands-on perspective, Arnout, Billie, do you have any thoughts on what you use in terms of metrics?
Well, here's an interesting thing, because if you are very heavy on caching and CDNs and all of that, if you do a lot of aggressive caching, then a lot of the things, if you've got a lot of recurring visitors, their page experience is actually really good because they've cached pretty much everything. So for instance, if you're in real estate and you've got a real estate portal, then people keep on coming back. If you have very aggressive caching and good image sizing, it might not be that your initial load is that good, but the full experience is way better. So I think on that, I also really like using the Crux reports. If you don't know, I can share the link on how to set that up, because those will say like real user data instead of lab data, and that might differ quite significantly from this. And yeah, so that's another one. A second one I would use is, are there devices or certain users that don't seem to reach goals or convert? Then there might be something wrong with their experience. So it's always interesting to look at these buckets as well. It can be devices, it can be users, it can be an operating system, a browser, whatever. So that's always an alert, a great way of approaching things, because in the end, we're not in it for the traffic, but we're in it for users to reach something we want them to reach, either buy or create a lead or whatever. So those are, in my opinion, my two tips on this.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Billie?
I think I take a bit more of sometimes take a bit more of just a user approach to it. I'll go on a website and just navigate it myself and make note of issues I find. I'll go on it using a text to speech, so I could see how it would be navigating a site, say if I was visually impaired, or I'll play around to just try and see how it is like navigating on my phone and just make notes myself. When I first started in SEO, I didn't actually know that like there was a tool that would tell me how quick the page loaded, so I'd get a stopwatch like on my computer and do it on my phone. And I still sometimes do that because I'm just like curious about it, because you see all these numbers in the tools and things we can check, and it just adds up to being a lot more than what it actually does, because it breaks everything down to such a minuscule level that it doesn't actually correspond when you put it all together. I find that quite a lot on page speed insights. So I just much rather, I like taking the user approach and think, oh God, this is taking too long. I definitely need to do something here. Or no, this isn't actually that bad. Like, if I was a user, this wouldn't put me off. I think as an SEO, I'm much more aware of what a user doesn't react well to. So doing that approach just means I can, like, not think as an SEO. I can just think as a user, but also like, this isn't right. This, but keep on going, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
It really makes sense.
So I've got another kind of technical one here. I don't have a clue on the answer to this one. Let's see if anyone does. How do you account for the difference in number of pages reported in each core Web Vitals category between Search Console versus Google Data Studio versus PageSpeed API?
It's like with anything, there's disparities from Shopify Analytics to Google Analytics. There's disparities between clicks on Search Console and Google Analytics. Like, there's always going to be disparities in the number of pages there. I'm very excited for this, the new crawl options for Sitebulb to come out, where we can look at these core Web Vitals in there, because I think that'll be even more confusing for people, because they'll be they can see everything on a more granular level, and there's probably going to be disparities between Search Console and this as well. And it's a case of, if there's a big disparity, there's something wrong. You need to investigate why aren't these pages like being flagged. But I think there's no definitive answer. I don't know if you'll agree with me on that one. But I don't think there's a one stop answer for that. Like, there's too many factors and too many different variables across different websites.
Definitely, and I would also like to add is that I've seen this happen a lot of times. Google is using multiple sources of the truth, their truth. So the one tool reports this, the other tool reports this. There are different teams working on different integrations. And I mean, it's the same with the structured data testing tool or Lighthouse versus the PageSpeed API. Even though all the settings are the same, you'll get different scores. And they haven't unified it into a single thing. They might actually change something in Lighthouse and not change the weighting in PageSpeed. So you'll get a different score. It's like they're just different teams. And that's the simple answer. And I still remember that having a chat with the Googler and saying, well, why isn't the structured data testing tool showing this as right? And he was like, I don't know who even maintains the tool. So, and I don't think it has been updated for a while. Oh, I can check for you. Yeah. But that was it. So I think it's such a massive company. They've got different teams working on different parts. And they don't all use the same data sources and APIs. It's that simple.
I think the other thing you're seeing, like, so with the PageSpeed API, you're essentially just firing a page at it and going, what's the score for this? What's the score for this? Whereas what you're seeing in Search Console is them making assumptions about a group of pages and going, right, well, we've got 50 pages here that all use the same path. They're probably all the same. We've only got one page that we've actually got any core Web Vitals data for, but we're going to just assume they're all the same. So we're going to lump all them together. So when you're using the API, you're only ever going to get one at a time. But when you're looking Search Console, you're going to get these when they're grouping and chunking the pages together. Again, we'll just show you this big difference between the numbers. At least if you're just looking at numbers, you're going to end up with completely different numbers.
Yeah, so, and it's the way it is. Like I've literally seen pages coming back to me saying, well, this doesn't hit the scores, the CLS scores and stuff. And then I would test it. It was like, no way that failed the validation. And then you try it the second time and it runs. It's like, you know what? We'll just do the best we can.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that we've seen. So just actually to clarify, what we've got in Sitebob is not going to be the core web vital. So we're not taking the crux data. We're just running lab tests. And the main reason for that is because the PageSpeed API for so many sites will give you back such a pittance of results, because they've only actually got, real user data for so few pages on the site. It's actually semi-useless. But even with the lab data, you can, a lot of the things that we were trying to do is trying to benchmark, right? Let's make sure the lab data that we're giving back when we're running it is the same as Lighthouse gives. Or let's check it against PageSpeed API as well, the PageSpeed Insights. And you run it one time, you'll get one set of values. You run it another time, 2 minutes later, you'll get a completely different set of values. Lighthouse will be different to PageSpeed. And there is no, the truth of the matter is there is no ultimate source of truth. And that's what we found. Like what we'll be trying to surface it through the tool, and what we're hoping that people will take out of it, is that the general trend, in general, the CLS is too high here, or in general, time to interactive is too high, rather than specifically, here's this exact value. And if okay, we've got a problem with CLS, then you want to go and deal with it, rather than it is exactly this, or we're trying to work to exactly this specific value. Because again, with the data from that Google are putting out there, is not only sparse, it's also 28 days behind. So it's very, very difficult to be able to go, right, we want to make an improvement and test it straight away and know that it's right.
Yeah, so many discrepancies. Right, so we're rapidly running out of time. So I'm going to take one more question from the chat, one from Simon. So we've already had quick wins, easy stuff. But what is the hardest thing to fix in Core Web Vitals? Why, and have you fixed it? Always Simon to be awkward.
Billie, you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Do you want to start? I'm trying to think of the worst ones I've done.
No, I think the worst ones. Well, I'm just going to say, because Jeff didn't say anything about me not being allowed to use it depends, but I'm just going to say it all depends. But I think the biggest one to start doing is removing excessive scripts. So lines of code, because most devs, they don't really want to touch it because they don't want to break it. They don't want to do like all of these things. And they basically get into these conversations where you go, well, it must be in there for a reason. And I've literally seen where it's like, no, we're not using it here, but we can't take it out because then this will stop. And I said, well, really? Because we haven't tested all of that. So I think, basically removing excessive weight or lines of code from JavaScript and CSS is easily the hardest one for me. One thing we did touch upon as a quick win, I would like to add, is use a lot of pre-stuff. So pre-DNS, pre-fetch, like all of these kind of things can greatly improve a lot of the user experience. But I think the scripts and removing excessive lines of code is probably the hardest one to get right.
Yeah. I just flashed that question about scripts up there because that was one of the questions that we had lined up for you that we didn't really get to, is about scripts.
You confused me there for a minute at least, Jeff.
Yeah, I just thought... I
was like, where's Simon's face gone?
Yeah, I thought he was going off on the scripts. So sorry, I've come back though. So Billie, how about yourself? Is there anything?
Yeah, so I was thinking about it, and anything that requires more developer time or money for the client is always going to be the hardest thing to fix. That normally falls under time to first byte. So like if there's an issue with the server and we need to update the servers, there's going to be pushback. We're probably not going to get that one fixed. I have taken credit for this, but my client was migrating, they just didn't tell me. So we did move servers in that process. And it fixed, and I took credit for that. But also, like, there's a point where there's only so much you can do without like starting to look at the caching, without looking at the theme, looking at how the site's currently created. And if that's not right, it's not always going to be an easy fix, because we're going to need more development time. We're going to need designers and things like that to be on board. And just sometimes the client's not willing to put that money forward. But it can be really valuable, because like we want a fast, good looking site. And sometimes what's best for a fast site isn't as visually appealing to what a client wants, and there's only so much you can do with it.
I think another one that I often see mistaken is that they use PNGs for pretty much all the images because they think they are the smallest. Well, actually, they're the largest. In a lot of cases, there's a few use cases where you should use PNGs or could use PNGs rather than JPEGs. But most of the time, your JPEGs, if there's any contrast, it's just way better. And I've seen really big sites screwing this up. So that's another big one.
Back to images again there. Mm-hmm. Right, so like I say, we're running out of time, so I'm going to have one quick last one about the future of this stuff. So I want to finish up on. So we're getting a lot of changes coming about at the moment and upcoming in the short term. But do you expect Google's stance on performance changing, and how?
It's totally going to change, definitely. I reckon 2 years' time, all going to change, because just think 2 years ago, everyone was obsessed with mobile first. Yeah, we're still always trying to like get everything right on mobile, but like how the internet works is just ever changing, and we are as a society changing as well. So like I've seen in this past year so many people talking more about accessibility. I think that's going to become a bigger factor, making sure your website's perfect for everyone. That I know that's somewhere in Google's core statement, is to making the internet available for everyone. So I think it's just going to keep getting better, more stressful for us, but better for users. And I can't wait to see what it is next, because you've not got a good SEO strategy if you're scared of Google changing, really.
True.
I'm just going to say, if you look at their business model, it 100% gonna be a big push for less scripts, more faster websites, because the sheer cost to them it is to digest the world's information is so absolutely massive that imagine.
And now they're rendering everything as well.
What?
And now they're rendering everything as well.
Exactly, that's the point. So there's a great piece by Eddie Osmani written 2 or 3 years ago about the real cost of JavaScript, which is mind-boggling if you read that. And if we would use 20% less scripts, they probably would end up making a few billion more in profit, because it's 100% saving. So if they're not going to do it for users, they're going to do it for their own profitability. And just think about that. So I think that's going to be a big one. And I think, secondly, I'm expecting a big push towards PWAs or web apps. Reason being that a web app is just a JavaScript app or an app that runs on a browser, but actually all the information for the pages runs through webhooks or APIs. So it could be very easily digested by search engines. Now think about that in terms of scalability. So I think we'll see a push towards that. And this is just how do you call it?
Transition.
Another step another step towards that. But I think what drives them the most, and they'll never admit this, is just their own profitability, because they can't serve more ads. They are trying to get deeper into the transaction funnel with checkouts and stuff. But that's a small portion. So if you can't make more that way, you need to save more money. If we are going to make the web a lot faster, they're going to save, as you said, Patrick, with rendering so much money. Because we've had discussions. If you run Sidebulb with Chrome, my laptop almost melts. It literally just goes. Shh. It's why I now have a separate machine. But that is what's happening. So all these web-based crawlers, they are a bit scared of doing rendering crawling because it's very, very expensive. So just think about that. So the push will be, they'll keep on hammering on it. And on that, I don't think it's a ranking factor, but that's my personal opinion. Because what it is, it's a user experience factor, which if a user has a good experience, that will be taken into account in the way they serve pages, aka in your ranking. But it's not, as we always think, like backlinks are ranking factors. I think it's an experience factor satisfying a user. That was it. Sorry.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Exciting things to come. Well, yeah, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to wrap that up. I think we got enough questions that we could have gone on all night. Thank you to everyone for joining us and for all your questions. Thank you, Simon, on the chat. You've done a good job of fielding them to us, so I could pick them up. A massive thank you to Billie and Arnout for sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name, Arnout, for joining us all the time. Is there somewhere that people can follow you, keep an eye on what you're doing, both of you?
Yes, so I'm on Twitter or any social media with this handle, Billie Geena. Both Billie and Geena spelt wrong, but that's how my name is. I am also on LinkedIn under Billie Hyde if you want to find me there, but I do personally hate LinkedIn, so I don't really update it.
Some recruitment consultants on LinkedIn, never ending.
Yeah. I think mine is just at Hellemans on Twitter.
Yeah. Yours is there.
It's there. And if you see a mayonnaise logo, that must be me.
Yep.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you very much again. I've had a great evening chatting this stuff. Thank you to everyone for watching us and sending you the questions. Please subscribe to YouTube so we can keep you up to date with any more of these live streams. And we shall see you again shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.